After watching a recent video of Ryan on 60 Cycle Hum, where he converted a take-along children's tape player into a small practice amp, I want to try something similar in a pedal format. I don't need a practice amp, even though I should practice more, but I just like pedals, and I thought this would be a fun project to do, and it's a little bit smaller as far as something more usable for me. I ended up buying a Fisher-Price Model 826 tape player for this project, and I'll show you what that looked like. This is the actual tape player that I use. I've gutted the circuit board, which we'll go over in a second, but for anyone born in the 70s and the 80s, you've probably had something like this or something similar. And if you've seen Brian's video, it looks very similar. So they're probably all made by one or two companies and just rebranded, I'm assuming. So I gutted the circuit and left everything else there. I'm calling this the FP826 Fuzz Blaster. And the reason for that is, FP for Fisher-Price, 826 because it's the model number, and Fuzz Blaster because it was just, a fun name. I don't think it's really a fuzz pedal. I think it's more a distortion pedal, but you could get some fuzz-gated sounds with this control, and we'll talk about that in a second. So, let's open it up. Yeah, that's my little cartoon that I call Junior. Today's date, because I actually finished it up today. FP826 Fuzz Blaster, and then, I signed it because why not? Alright, so here we go inside the pedal. I think that's lined up pretty good. Okay. Alright, so the chip on the board is an LM389, which is 3 NPN transistors. The original circuit itself was rated for 6 volts, so I didn't want to have to carry around a secondary power supply or use a special power supply just for this unit. I wanted to run a standard 9-volt Boss, center negative power supply, and not have to worry about accidentally plugging into the wrong thing. So what I did with that was I got myself an LM317 voltage regulator, and coming off of the main power line, I have a 100 ohm resistor on the power feed, and that's going into the LM317. And you can't see it, but it's down here, the 317. Now, the 317 is an adjustable voltage regulator, I guess you would call it, and it's adjusted with a pot, and the pot's right here. So I'm using a 1K linear pot to adjust the voltage. So with the 100 ohm resistor, I have the power coming in at around 6.4, 6.5 volts, which I think is acceptable, and I'm really not running it at that high of a voltage. And when we do the playing demo, you'll hear why. I think it sounds a little bit better when it's turned down slightly. So again, the most coming in is 6.4, 6.5, and I could bring it down to almost nothing. If it goes too low, basically the signal cuts out completely. It goes into a gated point, which sounds pretty good. Then it gets really gated and almost broken sounding. And Ryan even mentioned that in his video. It's like with dying batteries, it's not a good broken sound. It's not a good gated sound. It just sounds broken. So I was able to reproduce it by turning the volume down, or turning the voltage down too much. I installed a 500 ohm pot. So what was in there originally was a 25K or a 25 ohm, I forget the value. This is actually a standard guitar pot. It's nothing fancy. The 25 ohm that it came with, it just wasn't cutting. It wasn't giving me enough voltage regulation, I guess you would say. It was either full volume, which was super loud, or nothing. So you could barely touch the volume, and it was just screaming. It was unusable. The 500, why the 500 is allowing me to do more with it, I don't know. I think it should be the exact opposite, but it's working. I'm not going to question it. So running that into the board itself, and here's the board that we're looking at. The board really hasn't changed. The pot was here. You can't see it, but it would be on the top side here. It's been removed, and that's where the 500K is, or the 500 ohm pot is. This thing right here, this is actually part of the record mechanism. So if you're going to hit record on the tape player, you still need the tape to run, but you don't want the tape to play because you want to record. What this is doing is it's either turning off, it must be turning off the play head. And the play head, it's hard to see, but there is the head right here. You have the shielded and the black, and that is actually the input for the pedal now. So the way it works is you're playing through the head, but the head is now an input jack, if that makes any sense. And again, Ryan showed that fairly well because he did a little bit of an assembly of it. I didn't record the assembly of it just because I figured it's already been done. So when you push this in, and if we do that, if I push that in, the circuit goes mute. And the idea would be, if you do that, and this is mechanical because inside the tape player, there's a lever that would hook into this. And this is spring-loaded, so to push that. Now, I was thinking, if I do this model again, I might put some type of, remove this, but use the connections beneath it to put maybe a stutter control. We'll see. I added a 3-pole foot switch, so now I have true bypass. And that's basically what I've done. The circuit itself has not changed that much. The off-board wiring is a combination of following a fuzz face design that I recently built and just utilized that wiring to come up with the off-board wiring for this. So the board itself was a little interesting because it seems to have 2 separate grounds. I don't know why, but I needed to make 2 separate grounds. That's why you have a bunch of wires coming out here. And I'm sure there's an easier way of doing this. But the only way I could get this to work reliably was to add these separate ground leads coming off. So it's a little bit of a rat's nest, I admit. But it was more or less done so it could be usable. And now it's actually extremely stable, and we're going to do a playing demo shortly. And it's a very fun pedal to run through, and it's extremely reliable from what I've seen with it so far. Even though I just got it done today, I've actually had it completed as a circuit, as a running pedal inside another pedal enclosure and just on a board that I use for a few weeks now without any problems. And it's been, like I said, working pretty well. And as far as the enclosure goes, this thing is a very much in-your-face, loud, distorted sound. So I wanted to put this into an enclosure that you're going to see, that is going to stick out and say, yes. So this is, a Hammond Octagon that I got powder coated from Hammond, or I guess Hammond does the powder coating, I'm not sure. Red knobs just because I wanted it to stick out. I wanted it to be, in your face like the sound it makes. So that's the a little bit on the enclosure. I'm also planning on making a couple more of these. I actually purchased them. They should be here in a couple of days. One is the exact same one that Ryan did, the take along, but I'm going to keep it a little bit more simple. I'm going to just have one control, just a volume. I want to make it in a slightly smaller pedal enclosure. I just keep it very basic. Do the same basic thing where I have a 9-volt source coming in and I don't have to worry about power regulation. So I'll probably use another one of the voltage regulators, but instead of being a variable, it'll be fixed. So 9 volts or whatever coming in, 6 volts coming out no matter what. Or 5 volts, whatever. What I'm going to do is I'm going to play around with the voltage to see what's best and what it sounds best with. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do an 8-track, portable 8-track player. And that I might get a little bit more, we'll say, exotic with the circuit. I'm going to add a tone control. There's a tone control there now, but it's more of a switch. So I'm assuming it's a resistor-based tone control. So either, one position is a resistor, the other position is a different resistor. I'm going to pull that out. I'm going to put it in a pot. I'm going to see if, what else I could do with that circuit. Maybe I could add a gain stage. We'll see. That's going to be down the road a little bit. I got some other projects I got to work on. So, but yeah, let's. We'll come back in a second with a quick playing demo. All right, so there we go. We're running through a orange TH30 on the clean channel. There's a little bit of reverb from a Carl Martin headroom. And I do apologize about the poor audio. All the audio is actually coming out of my cell phone's microphone, so that's what I have. Clean tone, to give you an example. And as far as the guitar goes, this is a 5-alarm fire, 5-alarm something. They make Ibanez style bodies. They're kind of like the Warmoth of Ibanez. So this is a Paul Gilbert copy that I got a little while ago that I stripped down, refinished. It's got a set of Seymour Duncans in it, and it's running a Godot, what was it, 1996T trem, so clean tone. And that's single coil. We'll go to humbucker mode. All right, so let's turn it on. And you'll notice it's still quiet. I'm hoping you notice it. I don't know how much of the microphone's actually picking up. So just going back, this is your voltage, this is your volume. So again, if we turn the voltage down, and I'm going to try to play and turn it down at the same time. You lose volume. If you turn the volume up, you start getting that spitting, gating sound. So you could turn it down more, and what I find that if you turn this down and turn the volume up, you could almost balance it until you get to the point where you turn it down too much and you basically kill the voltage. What I'm finding is if I turn it up to around there, it sounds pretty good. If you turn the volume down, it's working as a volume control. Now, if I turn the volume back up, but I turn it down on the guitar, it does clean up. It cleans up a lot. And that's just me going into the middle position, and that's going into the neck position on this. So you're still getting overdrive, you're still getting pretty nasty, but a lot more controllable. Obviously turning the volume back up on the guitar. That's me turning the volume down again on the guitar. The voltage control will also act as somewhat of a volume control. So if I have the volume all the way up here and I play this, it's louder, quieter. And this is where the controls become very interactive with each other. So if I turn that down and I'm wherever the voltage is on that, I don't have a voltage meter on there. It's one thing I was thinking about putting on there, but it was getting a little crowded on the board anyway. If I leave it down there, then I get a pretty nice sound. So let's try this with a delay to see how well it plays with other pedals. Alright. I do believe I'm out of tune. Better. For delay, we have a way huge Aquapus. I've had this thing forever, and yeah, let's just hear that by itself. And now with the Fuzz Blaster. right, so there you have it. Fuzz distortion pedal from a kid's tape player. It was a really fun project, and like I said, I'm going to do a couple more. I think it's fun to take something that someone might consider junk or they're going to throw out and turn it into something usable. And honestly, there's some trial and error on this, I'm not going to lie. I've only made a couple other pedals before. One was an analog noir harmonic percolator. I also made a fuzz circuit from schematics I found online. So I'm learning this. I'm getting into it, and I'm trying to, we'll say, hone my skills, but at the same time enjoy this. I think you could get easily frustrated if you put together something that's giving you a hard time or it's not working the way it should. So it's great when you have a platform that starts off working, and you could mold that into something more usable or something more akin to what you want. So, thanks for watching. If you have any questions, you got any comments, leave them in the comment section. I will try to answer them. Don't be afraid to do this. Don't be afraid to give it a try. This was not rocket science. This is extremely easy to do, and you could go out, you can find a couple of books on how to wire up these circuits. There's a bunch of Facebook groups that really go into detail. I know that Brian Wampler has a course that you could take that I'm probably going to sign up for, and that goes into really heavy detail, it sounds like, where you design your own circuits and things like that. So very cool. And yeah, like I said, the next one that I make I'll probably put out too, and we'll go from there. So again, thanks for watching.